Have you ever felt a strange pressure in your chest and thought, it's probably just indigestion? That's exactly what happened to Margaret, a 70-year-old retired teacher from Arizona. One afternoon, after watering her plants and preparing lunch, she noticed a tightness in her chest. It wasn't sharp, it wasn't sudden, it felt like something heavy sitting on her breastbone. She shrugged it off, took a sip of water, and sat down, thinking it might be the sandwich she just ate. Hours passed, the discomfort lingered, but she told herself it was nothing. That night, as she tried to sleep, the tightness returned this time, radiating to her jaw. Still, she didn't call for help. "I'll see how I feel in the morning," she whispered to herself. But by dawn, Margaret was in an ambulance. She had suffered a heart attack and nearly didn't survive. Stories like hers are tragically common. Too many people dismiss the earliest signs of heart trouble, not realizing how silent and deceptive they can be. This video is about breaking that silence because recognizing these signs early could save your life or the life of someone you love. I'm Dr. John Johnny, a heart doctor and medical researcher who spent over 4 decades studying, treating, and listening to the human heart. I've stood beside thousands of patients, young and old, at the exact moment they realized something was wrong, but far too often that realization came too late. You see, heart disease doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, and in those whispers, quiet signals like fatigue swelling or a flutter in your chest, there are life-saving clues. What haunts me most as a doctor isn't just the patients I couldn't save, but the ones who didn't know they needed saving. They felt a little tired, a little dizzy, maybe coughed a bit more than usual, and they kept going until one day their heart couldn't. That's why I made this video, not to scare you, but to open your eyes. Because knowing what to look for can mean the difference between life and loss. And if you care about your health or the health of someone you love, this message is one you can't afford to ignore. The truth is, most people don't realize that heart trouble rarely begins with drama. It doesn't always start with a crushing pain or a dramatic collapse. It often begins with something far more subtle, a strange tiredness that won't go away, a bit of breathlessness while climbing the stairs, or a slight pressure in the chest that shows up at the end of a long day. These signs are quiet and life is noisy. We're busy, distracted, always pushing forward, so we tell ourselves it's just stress, just aging, just a bad night's sleep, but just can be deadly. That's why this video matters, because when we dismiss these early signs, we miss the chance to act while we still can. My goal isn't to frighten you. It's to help you recognize what your heart might be trying to tell you before it's too late. This isn't just information, it's protection for you and for the people you love. So stay with me. You're about to learn the 8 most critical signs that your heart may be in danger and why listening now could save your life. Fatigue is one of the most overlooked signs that your heart might be in trouble because we often confuse it with simply being tired, aging, or just having a busy week. But there's a difference between normal tiredness and the kind of exhaustion that doesn't make sense. I've had patients tell me, "Doctor, I didn't run a marathon. I just folded laundry and had to lie down." That kind of deep, lingering fatigue, especially when it hits after light activity or first thing in the morning, is not something to ignore. It's your body telling you that your heart may be struggling to deliver enough oxygen-rich blood to your muscles and brain. Your cells are starving for energy, and your heart is quietly trying to keep up. When your fuel system isn't working properly, even the smallest task feels like a mountain. If you find yourself constantly drained for no clear reason, don't chalk it up to aging or stress. Listen closely. Your heart might be whispering for help before it starts to scream. Shortness of breath may not seem like a heart issue at first. You might notice it when you're climbing stairs, walking across the room, or even just bending over to tie your shoes. You pause, catch your breath, and think, maybe I'm just out of shape. But here's the truth. When your heart can't pump blood efficiently, your lungs don't get enough oxygen, and your body reacts by gasping for air. I've seen it time and time again. Patients who once walked to the grocery store without a second thought suddenly feel winded just stepping off the porch. They tell themselves it's allergies or humidity, or maybe they just need more rest. But that breathlessness, especially if it creeps in during simple daily tasks or worse while resting, is often a sign of underlying heart failure or valve disease. And when shortness of breath becomes your new normal, your heart may already be struggling in silence. Don't wait for it to become an emergency. If catching your breath feels harder than it should, it's time to let your doctor know. Because every breath matters and your heart is working behind every single one. Your heart has a natural rhythm, steady, dependable, like a quiet drummer, keeping the beat of your life. But what happens when that rhythm goes off track? An irregular heartbeat, also known as arrhythmia, is often dismissed by patients as something harmless. It fluttered for a moment, they say. It skipped a beat, but then it went back to normal. But your heart isn't supposed to skip race without reason or feel like it's dancing in your chest when you're sitting still. These irregularities might seem brief, but they can be early warning signs of conditions like atrial fibrillation, a serious electrical imbalance in the heart that increases the risk of stroke, heart failure, and other complications. I've spoken to patients who felt their hearts pound in the middle of the night for no reason or suddenly speed up while reading a book. It frightened them, but they didn't seek help because the episode passed. But let me tell you, when your heart's rhythm feels out of sync, it's your body raising a red flag. Don't wait for the next episode to be worse. Pay attention. Even subtle changes in rhythm deserve serious attention because every beat counts, and sometimes the ones we ignore are the ones trying to save us. Swelling in your feet, ankles, or lower legs might seem like a minor annoyance, something you blame on standing too long, salty food, or just getting older. But what if that swelling isn't going away? What if your shoes start to feel tight every evening? Or you notice deep marks from your socks that weren't there before? As a cardiologist, I can tell you that this kind of swelling, especially when it happens consistently, isn't just cosmetic. It's often a signal that your heart isn't pumping blood efficiently. When the heart struggles, blood can begin to back up in the veins, causing fluid to pool in the lower parts of your body. I've seen patients who ignored this sign for months thinking it was nothing until they couldn't walk without discomfort or their legs felt heavy just moving around the house. Some even developed shortness of breath or chest pressure without realizing all the symptoms were connected. Your body's trying to tell you something, and swelling is one of the heart's quiet cries for help. So if you notice puffiness that doesn't go away with rest, or swelling that returns day after day, don't brush it off. Your heart may be working harder than it should, and early action could make all the difference. A cough that lingers longer than it should, or a wheezing sound that keeps showing up, especially at night or when you lie flat, might not just be allergies or a stubborn cold. I've had patients come to me after weeks of treating a respiratory issue with over-the-counter meds, never suspecting their heart was the real source of the problem. When the heart begins to weaken or fail, it can cause fluid to build up in the lungs. That fluid doesn't just sit quietly, it creates irritation pressure, and it reflects to clear the airways, resulting in a nagging dry cough or a low wheezy breath that just won't go away. Some people only notice it at bedtime, brushing it off as a bit of postnasal drip or something in the air. But if that cough lingers, especially if it worsens when lying down, it may be your heart, not your lungs, that needs help. I've seen patients misdiagnosed or unaware for too long until their breath became labored, their sleep disturbed, and their lives disrupted. If you find yourself constantly clearing your throat, coughing without explanation, or struggling to breathe deeply, don't wait. What seems like a harmless cough could be a whisper from your heart that it's struggling to keep up, and recognizing it early could spare you something far more serious down the line. Dizziness is one of those symptoms people often dismiss or excuse. I stood up too fast, they say, or maybe I didn't eat enough today. But when lightheadedness starts happening more frequently or without a clear reason, it may not be about your blood sugar or dehydration, it could be your heart. As a cardiologist, I've seen patients who feel perfectly fine one moment, then suddenly everything tilts. The room spins, their vision narrows, and they have to grab a wall or sit down to avoid falling. These aren't isolated incidents to be brushed off. They can be signs that your heart isn't pumping enough blood to your brain. When the brain doesn't receive steady oxygen and nutrients, your body reacts with warning signals, dizziness, unsteadiness, even brief moments of confusion. I remember one gentleman who told me he nearly fell in the shower twice before he decided to get checked. That decision likely saved his life. Dizziness may seem harmless, but when it starts interfering with your daily routine or catches you by surprise, it deserves serious attention. Your heart may be struggling in ways you can't see, and your brain is feeling the consequences. Listen to these quiet interruptions because they are not just about balance. They may be your body's plea to protect what matters most. When people think of heart problems, they often picture dramatic chest pain, sharp, crushing, sudden. But in reality, one of the most common and dangerous warning signs is much more subtle, a vague sense of discomfort in the chest. It might feel like pressure tightness or a strange heaviness that comes and goes. Some people describe it as if an invisible weight is pressing against their chest, not painful exactly, just wrong. I've had patients tell me they felt something off when walking up a hill or after an emotional phone call. They thought it was indigestion tension or even anxiety, but beneath that discomfort was an oxygen-starved heart crying out for relief. This kind of sensation, especially when triggered by stress or exertion and relieved by rest, is often the earliest sign of coronary artery disease, the very disease that leads to heart attacks. Sadly, many ignore it until it's too late. I always tell my patients, your body knows before you do. If your chest feels tight, pressured, or uncomfortable in a way that's unfamiliar or persistent, don't wait for it to become agony. Discomfort is your chance to act early, and it may be the only warning your heart is able to give before things take a serious turn. Severe chest pain or intense pressure is the most alarming and the most urgent warning your heart can give. This isn't a dull ache or vague discomfort. It's a crushing, unrelenting sensation that often feels like an elephant is sitting on your chest. I've had patients describe it as a vice tightening across their rib cage, a pain that radiates into the left arm, up to the jaw, or even into the back. Some feel a deep sense of dread or nausea, others break into a cold sweat. The danger here is not just the pain itself, but how long people wait to act. I've seen patients hesitate, second-guessing the severity, calling a friend instead of 911, or hoping it passes if they lie down for a few minutes. But when this kind of pain strikes, time is everything. It often signals a heart attack in progress, a blockage that is starving the heart muscle of oxygen and killing tissue by the minute. The faster you act, the more of your heart you save. So if you or someone near you ever experiences sudden severe chest pain, don't drive yourself, don't delay, don't wait to see if it gets better. Call emergency services immediately. Your life or someone else's may depend on how quickly you respond to this one critical moment. Your heart doesn't always shout when something's wrong. More often, it whispers through fatigue, breathlessness, swelling, or a flutter in your chest. These are not just symptoms to monitor. They are opportunities to intervene before it's too late. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Listen early, act early, and never underestimate the importance of subtle changes in how you feel. If even one of these signs sounds familiar, don't wait. Make an appointment. Talk to your doctor. Share this video with someone you care about. Too many lives are lost each year, not because help wasn't available, but because the warning signs were missed, denied, or dismissed. You don't have to be a medical expert to protect your health. You just have to be willing to pay attention. This video isn't just about information, it's about action, awareness, and advocacy. Your life, your family's life, could depend on what you choose to do next. So choose to listen, to care, and to act starting today.